We shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning.
Robbie, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Caleb.
So, you probably don't need as much introduction as usually I would ask, since you've been on the show before. I'm just super excited to get you back on. It's been, a while since we talked, and we finally got this time to kind of sit back down and talk again. How's life been since Animal Math came out? I mean, like it's we talked a little bit about that with like our first episode having been right around the time that it came out, but how's it been since?
It's been great. It's weird to have spent such a good chunk of your life working on something and anticipate, for years and years, it just like it seemed impossible that I was ever going to get over that hill and
Mhm.
actually be finished with it. So, yeah, back in September when I went to Austin to go see it at the premiere, it was really surreal. I was really anxious because I had no idea how these drawings, most of the drawings are like this big, and you put so much attention and energy on them, and then to be anticipating, wondering what's going to look on a huge screen and a big sound system. I was definitely really anxious just because it would have been different if I'd spent a year or two on it, but after 7 years, it's like it felt very high stakes. So it looked good, it was received well, and as we were just talking about before we went on, it alongside with the two other films that it was programmed with in
Mhm.
Fantastic Fest, all got picked up together for distribution. Like literally, we walked out of the screening and someone came up to us and was like, "Hey, so I've got this distribution company, and I think we should keep these three films together and release them as an animated anthology feature film," which was really
Mhm.
exciting because I had previously had some people, uh, one pretty well-known animator in particular who was like kind of giving me a hard time, telling me like, so like what's the end goal with this, like short films don't really get distribution or anything. Just had such a cynical mindset, and it really made me sad. It's like I'm not really doing this because I'm trying to like leverage a career out of it. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
make something I really like, and trusting that it'll find the right audience because I care so much about it. And so that felt good to like immediately prove him wrong about that too. And it's really exciting because even though I put so much time and effort into the film, it still only amounts to 15 minutes, which is the right
Mhm.
length for it. But now it's part of this whole package, and it's something you can go out and see this whole curation of different
Mhm.
visions together, and make a night out of it. So that's a great feeling. And the other filmmakers are really incredible. There's Girls Night Out by Ashley Singstacken,
Mhm.
very very funny writer and artist and animator who, she used to work for Eric Andre and Tim Heidecker, and
Oh, okay.
had her hands in all kinds of different projects. And then I don't know if you know Skinner. I first knew him because of this great album cover he did for Mastodon. I used to
Mhm.
sit and look at that years ago and really admire all the detail on it. And he and his filmmaking partner Ross Kennedy did Shrine of Abominations, which is this heavy metal stop motion epic. So all three of those together, each one gets progressively longer. I think the first one's 3 minutes, mine's 15. The last one is like getting closer to an hour, and there's a bunch of fun stuff in between. And I got to write new music for it, and I did a whole extra um, short cartoon, which was really fun. So there's a lot of goodies for people who have been waiting for the film to come out. So hopefully there's at least a couple of your viewers might be anticipating. We'll see. But yeah, keep an eye out. If anyone is curious about keeping up with screening announcements and stuff, you can just go to my website, and sign up for emails, and I'll make sure everyone knows when it's coming to their town.
Yeah, and anyone who's in near the Brooklyn area, near the end of the month, you'll be up there. Um,
Brooklyn Alamo
so
Draft House on the 27th.
yeah, yeah, and I wish I could make it out there, but I think what is that, like a Friday or something like that? I can't remember what day of the week it
Yeah,
is.
I'm flying up that day and leaving the next. So
Yeah, it's about a 5 hour drive for me. So I was like really weighing it in my head. I was like, oh, is
that's,
this it's definitely worth it, but it's like, is it worth
that's a
leaving
lot of
one full
driving.
day for? Yeah.
A lot of driving.
Um, so we talked a little bit about this also before we started recording, but and you brought it up while we were talking, but what what's this new kind of era for the film of distribution like? You know, you were talking about meeting with that guy who is part of the distribution company. Does that process stay with him and his company throughout the rest of Animal Math, or does it move on to someone else?
It's gonna stay with them. So the woman who picked it up was actually the programmer, one of the programmers at Fantastic Fest. So she's
Mhm.
the one who put these three films together. And I don't think she really had the idea until after seeing them all back to back with an audience. It was just like, oh, like these worked really well together. Let's keep it
Mhm.
that way. Um, so I don't know, we're having another meeting on Friday. I This is not really my forte. I'm not like a business guy. So I just answer whatever questions they have and show up whenever we have a meeting. But yeah, as like we all still own our films separately, and we can release them separately in the future. Um, but as far as this specific packaging of the films goes, that yeah, they have a whole marketing plan and a whole thing.
Mhm.
I don't know how much I can really say. There's a really cool boutique Blu-ray label. I don't know if I should mention them yet, but it's one that I followed for a long time that puts out really cool limited releases of
Mhm.
obscure films and cult stuff, and they give them the work. So really nice artwork and cool packaging. So I've gotten a lot of messages from people over the years wondering when can they get a Blu-ray or even like VHS or something. And so finally, there's like wheels are in motion. It's happening, and we should have a really cool copy that people can get, especially if they're not able to see it in the theaters or don't have access to the wherever it ends up for streaming. But they've been really great, and they gave us a lot of creative leeway. Basically just turned us all loose. So there's four directors in our group. The last film had two directors, and we all just kind of got together and decided what we were going to contribute and split up, and miraculously it all fit together. So like I said, I created more original music for it. I did the theme music, and I did this whole cartoon based on a completely wrong description that a film festival posted about my film, which is called Animal Math, if you guys don't know. And it, I won't get into the meaning. I don't ever talk about it, but it's not, what it might sound like if you haven't seen it. But I think they just use AI to write the description, and it said something to the effect of like a clever, playful exploration of animals, nature, and learning. And so I just thought that was really funny because either it was somebody who didn't care and just wrote whatever they guessed it was about, or they just used AI to write it. So I thought that was kind of a fun springboard. I grew up with late 80s, early 90s Sesame Street, and they used to really hire interesting independent animators to do their
Yeah.
little animated segments, and I always loved that stuff. So I thought it was kind of a fun opportunity to take exactly what they described and then kind of subvert it. So that was kind of a fun palate cleanser after spending so long on this short film where every little detail, like I really sweated over everything, and so
Mhm.
this was a fun thing where I was just cutting out little. I got a big stack of colored paper and was just cutting out animals and numbers and something pretty fun. So but they didn't really give us many notes or anything. They kind of just let us go off and do whatever we wanted. I just had fun recording music for the first time in like 5 years, which was when I did the score for the short film. And I thought they were going to have a bunch of notes, but they just what I turned in, they were like, "Yeah, that's great. Let's go with that." So it's been a really gratifying process to just like get to bounce off of everybody else's creativity and also not have a whole ton of oversight, and we could kind of just do what we wanted
Hmm.
and let it still be really scrappy and you know, like animation used to be in the 80s and 90s. You used to be able to turn on the TV and there was all kinds of crazy stuff. People like Bill Plumpton and um, oh god, Bruce Bickford, where animation used to just be really unhinged and anarchic and was allowed to be really a personal expression of the artist. And uh, I don't think people are really accustomed to seeing that these days.
Hmm.
And it's really fun when you just can turn people loose and see what they come up with. So I've enjoyed being a part of that.
Yeah, that was I think, I mean, going back to even whenever we first started talking last year, I think that was one of the things that really drew me like instantly to Animal Math was like, I mean, I when I am into animation, I usually I like to go for things that are kind of more transgressive. Like it's not just like, run of the mill, what this is what you get, but like, it is watching Animal Math, it was like it felt like a whole new world kind of like opened up that just doesn't that you don't see very much anymore. And that was, and so that's just a really cool thing to hear. But something I did want to ask, because I guess it's like the perennial question that haunts every person after their big project is, do you have any plans for what's coming up next? Do you think it's going to be another
uh,
7 year
I'm
jaunt?
I'm in the thick of it right now. I'll just show a real quick flash. A storyboard for
Okay.
probably can't announce it yet, but I'm doing a short animation for a pretty iconic TV network that's
Hmm.
famous for commissioning short animations that they play in between commercial breaks and stuff. So that's been really fun. It's going to be 30 seconds, but there's a lot to pack in. So that's been a
Hmm.
really cool challenge to try and figure out how I can tell a little story and kind of evoke a whole world in such a short time frame. And I'm also creating new music for that too. So uh, that's that's what I'm working on right now. And aside from that, I don't know if I'm going to have time to work on anything else at the moment because it's a pretty tight deadline. But I'm hoping to get back to work on a couple picture books that I had started years
Okay.
ago, and and just some original pieces. I want to build up a store of some original pieces that can be exhibited in a gallery type situation, and also just to offer up on my website. Because with the cutout animation, you're drawing all the backgrounds separately, you're drawing all
Hmm.
the characters separately, and each individual jointed piece and anything that could potentially move has to be drawn separately. And so you're drawing these kind of exploded diagrams of characters, and that's a really interesting puzzle in and of itself. But it it sounds so nice to just work on a picture that's complete in and of itself. It doesn't need to be broken apart. There's no like logistical considerations with how you're going to film it or anything like that. So that'll be really nice. And I've been playing around with this. My mom got me this dip pen for Christmas, and it really just um, made me realize how much I love drawing all over again. It's been really a fun challenge and a good practice to sit down and work with that every day. And aside from that, let's see. So I'm going to the premiere in Brooklyn in a couple weeks, and then I'm flying to Trollhättan, Sweden in mid-May
Oh.
to give a lecture at the Trollywood Film Festival. They actually haven't announced that yet, so I don't know if you have anybody in Sweden watching, but I'm going to be there. I feel grossly underqualified to give something as official sounding as a lecture, but I have written everything out and I feel pretty good about it. And it's a lot of stuff that you and I talked about last time
Hmm.
about. I think we got into some stuff about hermeticism
Yeah.
and alchemical philosophy, and how that kind of relates to human craft in this new, strange, rapidly shifting world that we find ourselves in. So it was nice to sit down. I've got a lot of thoughts about it, but I hadn't ever thought to sit down and actually write out a 20-minute thing on it. I had no reason
Yeah.
to. So it was a little daunting, but once I got in the flow of it, that was really fun, and I'm looking forward to that. And starting to do a little more things like that here and there. Like in January, I flew to Nashville, where I used to live for a long time, and I did a little animation workshop with the art students at Nashville School of the Arts, and that was really interesting. We screened the film at the theater at the school, and then the kids all came to a separate classroom, and we watched a bunch of Eastern European cutout animation, and I taught them about the technique that I use and kind of turned them all loose to explore their own projects. And I had no idea how that was going to go. For all I knew, they were just going to sneer at me and, and laugh out of there. But it was really it was really gratifying experience, and it really changed the conceptions that I had about some of the younger generations coming up. Some of these high schoolers are like really aware, and they're really on it. They're very dissatisfied with the kind of the world that's been handed to them, and it seems like they're craving deeper engagement and all the things that like we thought we were improving
Yeah.
with some of the technology come out in the last 10-20 years, and they grew up with it. It's weird. A lot of these things like social media and smartphones came along when I was kind of in I guess my late teens, early 20s. And it's strange to see this whole crop of people who grew up with touch screens and social media things, and they're kind of fed up with a lot of aspects of it, and they are obviously hungering to do something different than how things are being done right now. And so that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I feel I feel that all the time. I always joke with people that that my dream is just to like be completely distant from all of the tech that I have to use like day to day, which is hard whenever you work at a desk job like I do, where like I just have to use a computer, and it's like I have to use the phone, and it's like I have to connect with people on email, and it's all useful in its way, like like we talked about last time,
Very
but.
useful.
And it's kind of actually, I think, a little bit like what you were talking about earlier with animation from whenever you were younger, like in the 80s and 90s, compared to what it is like now, where it's like whenever these things first come into being and are just like starting to grow and get a step, um, they feel really like anarchic, and they feel really unique and special. Because I mean, I even remember whenever I was younger, and I mean, I guess this could also just be twinged with the bias of like I was a younger kid, so I was just seeing things as they were before I had a point of reference. But I mean, like I remember the iPods and the iPhones and everything being in their young state, where it just felt like they were there to provide entertainment and to provide use, but it wasn't like it felt like they were still the product and like we weren't the product. And
Yeah,
that's where it feels like it has taken a shift. My theory is like right around like 2014 to 2018 was when this all happened. But
sounds about
yeah.
right. And I remember getting an Instagram account, and you just skim through the user agreement. You're like, well, whatever. Like, it's not like so what? So they can see what I'm looking at and like target ads towards me. It sounds kind of interesting, actually. And I don't think any of us regular people, maybe people in the tech world, had
Mhm.
anticipated this. I mean, obviously they did, but um, yeah, us regular folk, how could you have anticipated that these technologies would all merge
Yeah.
and rely on basically just chipping away at us until we like are so accustomed to these things we feel like we can't live without them? And it's like, well, yeah, of course you can spy on everything I do, because what, am I going to not have a smartphone? Like it's crazy to see how slowly, bit by bit, you can relinquish your hold on your autonomy and your privacy. And it's hard because an independent artist like me, I rely on, and let's Instagram is how most people have found me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, same
led
with me.
to, all of the work I've been able to do, and I would happily delete my Instagram in a heartbeat, but I got to stay engaged on there, and emails and the whole thing. But I try to. I'm I'm getting better. It's easy like when you legitimately have to check for messages and respond to people and stuff. You
Mhm.
get caught up in it. You don't realize it. Like, oh, I need to see if this person got back to me, and then before you know it, you spent 5 minutes. Like, what am I even doing? You're just looking at a
Yeah.
bunch of crap. So I'm slowly getting better at keeping the necessary pragmatic business side of things
Mhm.
intact and staying disciplined and not allowing myself to get ensnared by the whole thing. So it's an ongoing process, but it's
Well,
possible.
and going back to what you had talked about with your with the lecture that you're doing in Sweden, I kind of feel a little bit bad asking this now because I'd already wanted to ask you this question to elaborate on our last episode, but now I don't want you to like ruin anything that you might be talking about in the lecture there. But could you talk a little bit about the relationship that you see between your hermetic interests and what's going on right now with the world with art and AI?
Well, I I think at the heart of it, what I think is fascinating about creating art as a human, especially not knocking digital stuff at all because I think that's totally valid, but just because I don't do it, I've never done it, I always work by hand. Um, I'm probably repeating a little bit of some of the stuff we talked about last time, but there's something I don't know. Let's see. How do I get into this? I really think we take for granted what creating art actually is
Hmm.
because we're just so completely inundated with all kinds of media to the point where it's just a wall of noise and there's no escaping it, and it's shifted our relationship to it in a lot of ways to where it's just seen as a distraction or you know or content or whatever you want to call it. It's just a disposable thing to fill up however much time it lasts, and then you move
Hmm.
on to the next thing. And it's good to go back and look at work from hundreds, thousands of years ago and try to understand the role that art used to fill and
Hmm.
still does. It's just we're so overwhelmed, we don't really know how to sift through all the crap and all the things that are really meaningful, and we're forgetting how to engage properly with them. A lot, again, this is something I saw with these kids that I worked with in the animation workshop in Nashville. A lot of them really are craving a deeper engagement and wanting to own physical media, and which isn't just like a hipster like, oh, vinyl only, man, it sounds so much better. It's about the relationship you have with the piece of art.
Yeah.
It's when you just stream something. Streaming is great. I love to have. I got rid of my Spotify and got a different thing, but like I loved having Spotify. It's a great way to discover things. um but you really do pay more attention and connect with things more deeply when it's something that you had to earn, you had to pay
Mhm.
money for, you had to go and seek it out, and you can hold it in your hands and it's a tangible artifact. There's something different about that. So looking at how art has at the space that it's held in culture and society throughout basically all of human history until very, very recently,
Mhm.
it was this much bigger kind of all-encompassing thing and people used to be much more on the same page. A movie would come out, it would be in the theater for a couple of months, and people would continue to talk about it, and it had the ability to actually affect culture
Mhm.
rather than just being this flash in the pan. Maybe it goes viral for a couple weeks and then people move on to the next thing. There's just so much stuff. So one thing I'm touching on in the upcoming lecture is like we need to remember what art actually is. Like it's this really miraculous thing. First of all, as animals or beings, however you want to look at humans, um, the fact that we have this ability to simultaneously live in this whole other parallel world or dimension alongside
Mhm.
our immediate physical world. We have the world of ideas, symbols, beliefs, myths, archetypes, that kind of thing. We just completely take it for granted because this is all kind of filtered into comic book movies and the whole like
Mhm.
it's everywhere, and we don't think twice about it. But that's a huge step in the evolution of a species to all of a sudden understand like a representational image, to be able to make a mark that represents something. In the first person who drew a stick figure buffalo on a cave wall, and everyone in their little group understood, oh, that means that thing that we hunt. And then to go from there and be able to start identifying with animals and having this concept of like taking on their spirit or their abilities,
Mhm.
and that, this mystical element starts to become involved. So that's a really huge leap. And getting into someone like Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung, and you get acquainted with this idea that cultures that never had contact with one another, separated by oceans, they all still arrive at the same basic
Mhm.
stories and archetypes. And so that very likely means we're drawing on some kind of primordial common well of ideas and symbols. So the ability to be able to access that, navigate it, and then we can also take from that world,
Mhm.
and through paper, paint, clay, wood, whatever, transmute these abstract ideas into a tangible piece of work. You're basically like creating a portal into your own mind and your own consciousness. Like, I spent 7 years making this film. Doesn't mean it's good or you're going to like it or anything, but you can sit down and watch it and basically have access to years of thought and memory and work and imagination that I poured into it. And that might sound, I don't know, it might sound woo woo to people or something, but that's fundamentally like that's what you're doing. You are, and with animation in particular, using a camera to capture these images with light,
Mhm.
and then you're like releasing it into the eyes and ears of your audience. And of there's a lot of crap made, of course, too, but even advertisement affects your consciousness and affects your reality. And I quote Alan Moore in it, and he talks about this, how, like, that's fundamentally all magic is. Like, you're using symbols to manipulate consciousness.
Mhm.
And that's what art is. And you can see a crappy movie and forget about it 5 minutes later, but you can see a really, really good movie or really read a really, really good book, and it can totally change your life. If it really resonates with you deeply enough, it can completely change the trajectory of your interests, of how you see the world, of how, if it tells a story of somebody that you never would have been able to empathize with otherwise,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden for 2 hours you're walking in their shoes and you find yourself really caring about this person, it could completely transform your political beliefs,
Mhm.
you know, and some things are just entertainment, and that's great, but even that is a really potent kind of mystical thing. And I think we need to remind ourselves of that and be a little more careful. It's really hard when you're being subjected to these technologies that are inherently addictive, but if we're going to engage with these things, it's up to us to be a little more careful in our curation of what we take in, what we are putting into our heads and our consciousness, because it all goes in and becomes a part of us. And
Mhm.
if you're filling it with a bunch of disposable crap, I mean, that's exactly what is going to start happening to you. So yeah, that's a big theme that I've written about for this thing, because it's you're not just harvesting data. When you're influenced by something and you're inspired and you want to maybe reference an artist that you really love, it's not like you're just scraping data off of it and making an amalgamation. You are um, like Tim Burton, for example, somebody like him. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, his stuff's so quirky and gothic and stuff," but
Mhm.
it's not just that. It's like all these Universal monster movies and Hammer horror movies that he grew up with watching in the '60s. He's not just taking those things and spitting them back out in a way that he likes. It's specifically like he was so clearly affected by the memory of being a misfit weirdo in Burbank, watching these old movies like on TV in his living room on a Sunday afternoon in this boring suburb. And it's not just the data from these movies, it's his experience as the specific person he was at the specific time and medium through which he watched those movies. Um, it's that synthesis and marriage of ideas and tones that collides together to create what he is.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important. You know, you're when you're directly influenced by something that you love, you are taking your direct experience and memories of engaging with that work, and in turn trying to express how it made you feel. You're not. I mean, sometimes you might just copy little things here and there, and be like a visual magpie and take little elements from things, but you're still ultimately trying to reflect how these things made you feel, and there's a reason why you responded to them, and so you're engaging with it and reflecting it in a much deeper level than just saying, oh, give me this in the style of this, and having it spit out. And I think what you even if AI could completely duplicate the visual look of something, which it clearly can, because it's like an advanced copy machine when it comes
Mhm.
to pulling if you tell it to do something in the style of something, it's not like thinking for itself, it's scrubbing the internet for every instance of that reference that you prompted it with. um, what you put into it, I think people can truly sense it, it even if whatever the human has made looks rougher around the edges and maybe not as polished. um, I think people just instinctively resonate with something when you can, even if you can't really see it, you can
Mhm.
you can feel when somebody when it's come from somewhere real, somewhere organic. And that's a really hard thing to pinpoint. And because we want to reduce everything to like, how long did it take? How much did it cost? We want to think of everything in terms of efficiency, commerce, whatever. We've kind of we look at the value of things in a really strange way. And it's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter how, like, okay, so you did it a lot quicker. That's great. Good for you. But there's a reason it feels like crap because nothing went into it. Like it's not that interesting to harp on all this stuff, because anyone who's really interested in art and literature and stuff, I think we all feel similarly. So it's not like I'm giving you any new ideas about any of this, but um, it's interesting to see some people just like completely gobble it up and don't think twice about it. But again, surprisingly, with a lot of younger people, which I didn't expect, they're disgusted with it, and they're fed up, and they're not amazed by it. I think a lot of older people, it's like this newfangled thing that came along. Like, oh wow, look, I can send my nephew a cute cat gift that I just pulled out of nowhere. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the next couple of generations coming in, because they're simultaneously going to be a lot more technologically savvy than
Mhm.
the rest of us, but they also seem to be a lot more skeptical and aware of like how this stuff is affecting us, and I think they're going to find some interesting new ways to approach it. It's like I'm consistently blown away how often a lot of times it's like younger art students who reach out to me, and I thought they wouldn't care at all about an older handmade animation technique like this, but it seems to resonate with them, with a lot of them. And it's not even something they're like nostalgic for. It just seems like this weird prehistoric thing that they don't. So
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's actually kind of exactly how we met because I forget exactly how I found your page. I think it might have just come up on like my Instagram feed or something, and I saw it, and it just I don't know. It's like what you were saying. It was just that instant relay of our minds. Like I just got what it was that you were doing with those clips that I was seeing of your art, and I think that to that point of what you're seeing with this generation coming up, behind you is. I mean, me being part of that generation and kind of relaying to what we had talked about in the last episode about the alchemical idea of right before the transmutation is the darkest time in the process. That's whenever it looks like it's about to fail. Um,
putrefaction. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's how I really have started to see this age and why I feel like what's happening right now in our lives and in the kind of scope of humanity isn't just kind of the baton handoff from one generation to another, but it really feels like a new relay race is starting and like this is the beginning of it because it feels like there has been such an opening up of the possibility of a global consciousness with this thing, that the internet has provided us.
Absolutely.
And I kind of, the way that I see the world is I see a lot of things as kind of a pure binary. And so and it always feels like, most things operate on sort of a binary level at the very fundamental um, basis. And it feels like with something as big and as monumental as the internet, it works on this binary where on one side of it, you have this global communication. It literally is like it's the embodiment of the oldest spiritual idea in the book, which is that, we are all one and we're all one body, we're all one mind. We just kind of have to like realize that we are. And then that's whenever it starts to happen. And it's like it feels like it's provided that. But then on the other end of the binary, it's also provided literally the worst division that we've ever felt as a species because it has the ability to connect everybody into that one kind of collective mind. It's literally personified like the collective unconscious that Jung talked about, which I think is why Jung was such a prophet of his time. That was only about a century ago, and he kind of perfectly predicted what it was that we were going to draw out from uh, from what was within us and bring it without. And I mean, to that point, I feel like when ages of humanity are getting ready to shift, that's like when there's a big question that needs asked. And it doesn't just need asked, but it needs answered, which is like, okay, now what are we going to do with this binary? Are we going to use this tool that we have as like the way to unite us, or are we going to use it as the way to divide us? And I mean, right now it feels like it's kind of the latter, and it feels like we're really kind of barreling headfirst into the black hole. But
If this isn't the putrefaction stage
yeah,
in the alchemical process, I don't know what is. And it, yeah, look, social media is great. Um, AI can be great. I'm not like across the board against AI. I think in any instance where it can actually help people, that's great. If it can make some of the more mundane tasks that we have to deal with a little, it can free up time for us to be more creative and enjoy
hmm
our relationships and the good parts of our lives better, so we're not like filtering through emails or, you know, handling invoices, inventory, all the kind of boring things that happen with running an art business. Um, that's all great. Um, my only issue with this stuff is, yeah, there's like this spiritual aspect of it, which I guess a lot of people are uncomfortable with that term, but you can use whatever you want in place of that. But so yes, the connection aspect of social media, being able to discover inspiring things and connect with your friends and share things that you're doing, that's all wonderful. Connectivity is wonderful, but AI, again, having a little personal assistant, helping with medical advances, there's all kinds of great applications, right? But because by virtue of the people who are in charge of these technologies and who
Yeah.
have a vested interest in them, their proliferation, we are being exploited. And so
Yeah.
you can't just be, you can't have like a simple opinion on it. You know, we have to be wary and we have to look at it and be like, whoa, whoa, okay, cool. So I can generate a video that looks real and now I have content that's amazing. But what are we doing? What is
Hmm.
the point of this? Where is this headed? What do we actually want out of life? Is it really, are we really just trying to, like, the attention economy is just has spiraled out of control so much, and it's hard because somebody like me, independent artist, who you know, you want to let people know new stuff you're doing. When I'm releasing new prints on my website or I have a film premiere coming up, obviously I want to let people know, and the people who follow me want to know about it. But if I haven't posted anything for a couple weeks and then all of a sudden I come out and post something, it just gets buried
Yeah.
because the algorithm wants you to be like consistently posting every day to show that you're an active account. And so so you find yourself getting sucked into this game where you like have to, and it's like being coerced into spewing more bullshit out into the atmosphere just to try and cut through the noise, and it always makes me feel terrible. I'm always encouraging people to just sign up for my email
Yeah.
updates. I'll email you every month or two whenever I have something worthwhile, and you don't have to like skulk around on Instagram trying to find what's happening. Because I don't know. We need to slow down and take a big breath and figure out like what do we actually want out of our lives. And you know, I really just want to sit with my cats and read a book and, and not engage with all that stuff. It's weird. Even people who maybe don't think too much about it and they're really engaged on it, we all know it makes us feel terrible.
Hmm.
It's so strange to have that. We're all aware of this addictive quality and that it's made us anxious and it's like destroying our attention spans, and yet we can't live without it. So something's got to give. I mean, I'm sure we talked about this a little bit last time too, but like there's always for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and the pendulum's going to swing the other way, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I mean, things might continue to get worse because we're not just talking about technology. Obviously, there's a whole litany of terrible roads that we're headed down to the point where it's just like cartoonishly bad, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so I just, if you look at history, like that's not really sustainable unless we're really headed for the end somehow, which people have always thought throughout history, and I don't think that's happening. Then what's going to happen? Just like because it's always what's happened is it's just going to come, that the wave is going out, it's going to come crashing back in, and it's going to be really interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot of incredible art and a lot of really interesting new thinkers and a new philosophy for how to approach our lives in the technological age. It's like, okay, so we're totally connected, we can do anything. um let's look at this and figure out how to use this to our advantage so we're not in its grasp, and
Hmm.
we're not like being farmed
Yeah.
by these huge tech companies. Because it's getting truly scary with these AI companies partnering up with like um, with the surveillance and the military industrial complex. Um, it's time we start getting a little more suspicious about it. If you're not already, you need like think twice before you start just brainlessly engaging with this stuff, because it is it's insidious, and it doesn't have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of, I mean, that's where I think I try to draw the, I guess the optimism from, but at a certain point, it's also hard to as well because at one point, like whenever I'm talking about, it feels like really like the the skirting to the end of one age into another. It feels like a lot of old systems, and old guards, and I mean literally like old generations are coming to their end, as new generations start. But then at the same time, I can't say like across the board, that that's true in either department. Like I can't say that everybody who is younger, who's been, brought up in these generations is going to see it the way that, that we see it. Because I mean, a lot of the people at the forefront of like the technocratic, authoritative companies that are coming out are, I mean, they're pretty young guys, like they're pretty young people. And it's like and like you were saying earlier, it's just terrifying because they have such this skewed vision of what humanity is. They see it as like, they really do just see us as all bytes in the way to, bytes in their equation, to meet their end. And then, they're asked like, what do you see the value of humanity as? And they like they really have to think about it. Um, and like that's the most terrifying thing whenever you see somebody who controls like, a $2 trillion business be asked like, where do you see humanity? And they're like, "Phew, oh," and they really think
Then
about
think
it.
about it. Yeah. I can't remember. I don't want to misattribute this quote. I'm pretty sure it's the guy behind OpenAI, which I can't think of his name right now, but you
Sam
might have seen,
Altman?
I think so. You might
Yeah.
have seen the clip where he was like, yeah, well, AI will, without a trace of irony or self-awareness or anything, he literally says, yeah, he thinks that AI will eventually lead to the end of mankind.
Yeah.
And then he says, but in the meantime, we're going to have some really great companies created. Like that's almost an exact quote. And it's not until after like the moderator's reaction after that he seems to have like a faint glimmer of awareness of what he
Yeah.
just I really like it was such a weird insight into how these people think. And I don't want to sound like an old guy. Like I love technology. It's
Yeah.
great. There's so many great things that it allows us to do, and our lives are very comfortable because of it. But like, when our souls or whatever you want to call it are basically hanging in the balance, and our attention span is being monetized and weaponized in this way, it this is not a horse and buggy versus car type situation, which is like the argument that a lot of people want to have. Like, oh, so you think we should just stick with like be doing everything writing on paper instead of sending emails and stuff? It's like, no, but like this is a whole different thing we're talking
Yeah.
about. It's really not a gradual progression. This is a whole new category of technology. And yeah, I don't know, man. I'm optimistic though. I think you have to be, if only because if you're not, like, you're just gonna give up. And you need optimistic thought to like create this sort of reactionary behavior to these things. To it's so corny. What the quote is, like, be the change you want to see in the world. That's
Yeah.
so corny, but like it's true. And so like if you've just given up and you're like, oh, it's going to hell, you're not going to get out of bed and go do something productive or to help counteract any of this stuff. You're just going to succumb to it and let yourself get distracted by the never-ending well of entertainment that's available to you. And you're going to choose to disengage from the world instead. And so I think it is important to remain hopeful and to think about, like, what are your issues with the things that you see going on in the world. What is a small actionable thing that you can go do? um like you just initiating conversations like this. um Hopefully we're not completely preaching to the choir and might get somebody to think twice before they like engage in something that's completely mining their data and their privacy and everything for the benefit of somebody in a whole different societal stratosphere from them. And hopefully shift our thinking back towards like what is actually good for us, and how can we create a world that is actually good to live in, where we can be productive and healthy and safe and do the things we want to do without just bringing everything collapsing in on our heads. I got cats running around everywhere.
Yeah, it's always fun because the audience can't see any of this, but I've just been watching the cats walk all around. It's a great little backdrop to what's going on.
Four of them around here.
Well, and that leads into something really cool that I think was just starting to happen. You were talking about in our last episode, but that I saw you make some posts on recently, and it kind of relates to, it relates to the kind of the waves of generations. But you, in the past year, have have become a father of somebody now, and I think that it's just amazing because like you said, we can't nobody's going to save the day unless we're the ones who save the day. And it's one of those kind of crazy notions, but like what has becoming a father like done for your view of the world, for your art, kind of for your I don't know, for your life in general.
Definitely feels higher stakes.
Yeah.
My parent would tell you that. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I would have the attitude of just like, ah, well, whatever happens to the world, it doesn't matter if I didn't have kids. But for sure,
Mhm.
looking at this little helpless, trusting person who's like just starting to get a handle on their immediate environment, and they look at
Mhm.
you and they just trust that you know what's going on and are going to protect them. It's something really heartbreaking and intense about that dynamic. And so you can't waste your time worrying about how things are going to happen. And so I I try to just focus on hopefully what every parent focuses on, which is just trying to equip him as best I can for the world. I mean, he's just turned one not that long ago, but like
Mhm.
you still try to infuse them with all of the strength and capability that you want them to have, and it just makes it a lot more tangible to think about the future. You can look at this little guy and realize that he's in all likelihood gonna go out and be a part of this strange dimension that we live in. Hopefully, impact it for the better. Um, and it's made me really aware of just how much deep programming is going on at this stage. I think a lot of people historically just you look at babies and like, oh, they don't know what's going on. It's fine. And so you argue and let commercials blare in the background and whatever. People just think, oh, they're not absorbing any of this. They totally are. Like I
Yeah.
can see even months ago when he was like just starting to seem more to be more conscious and aware. um he's totally absorbing things in the environment. If I'm not acting out um from anxiety or stress or whatever, like I know he can tell if I'm stressed, and it makes
Mhm.
him feel insecure. And so it's made me try to get a better handle on how things outside of my control are affecting me, and talking about the whole curation thing, allowing like being careful what you allow into your head, and you have somebody else around too. Like you really start being aware of like not just what might be on TV or whatever, but like how often is my attention just dropping out and I'm checking my phone,
Mhm.
or it really it clarifies things in a way. It's like, what do you really care about in your life? And it's like, well, I care about doing good work and staying healthy and having like meaningful time with my family and my cats. Like it's kind of what it boils down to. I want to take in great art. I want to read good books and watch good movies, listen to good music. I want to share that stuff with this new little person and see what kind of things he's interested in and help him foster those interests. Um, but it's so easy to get mired in all these different distractions and things that are available to us. And I think when you don't have a little person in your that you're responsible for to keep you in check, it can be easy. It's easier to fall into some of those traps, and
Mhm.
um, definitely like sharpens your focus a little bit and makes you really think about like, how am I operating? Is he seeing me freak out because I dropped something or saw something upsetting on the news or like whatever. There's so many different things that affect our behavior and our mood. And um, think I'm getting a better handle on all of that stuff. And it kind of forces you to be optimistic. You look at this person, it's like, well, he's not gonna, he's already this really bright, interesting little guy. And it's like, if he like gets messed up, it's kind of on me. Like he's already a great person. He's already interested in all kinds of things. He wants to sit and read, and he's very like he's well, at least flip through his books. He's not reading, but he loves musical instruments, and like there's just this purity. And I don't know if a lot of I'm sure some parents don't think about it in this way, but it's like he's kind of perfect, and it's like it's on me to just not crush it and
Yeah.
and turn him into something that sees the world as a place that's inherently out to get him, and that's like he needs to see the world as a place that can be harmonious and that he can affect for the better. And yeah, there's all kinds of chaotic and dangerous things that happen out there, and there's no guarantee of safety or things turning out for anyone. But I think the attitude with which you approach the world really does have, barring just really bad luck and tragedies happening out of nowhere, I think your outlook and what you expect from the world has a pretty big impact on how you go out into the world and affect the people around you. If are you mistrustful and insecure, like you're gonna, those are kind of two big things that really are developing now, even as a little baby. And if you hopefully instill in him the sense that this is like a really interesting plane that we all exist in, and through connecting with people and developing your interests and your abilities, you can navigate this space and shape your life in a way. Like if you can implant that in someone, I think that can go a really long way. Yes, bad things happen. I've had all kinds of unexpected things happen to me that you don't plan for. Doesn't mean that everything in your life is going to go perfectly, but I think if you go out into the world with a fundamentally suspicious but optimistic mindset, and the ability to like manifest your ideas and your thoughts into what you want to make, whether it's a business or some art, or whether you just want to go be a good employee for somebody, like what you bring to that is going to shape your reality ultimately. And so trying to just not mess him up too bad and make him a capable little person who isn't afraid of the world, which yeah, it's hard because things are especially chaotic. But just look at any point in history, basically. You go back a few decades, like we've had these really intense bottleneck moments forever, where everything just seems to be closing. And, like I can't imagine living through World War II. That must have been absolutely terrifying. There's been so many different historical events where people must have just been completely hopeless. So it's good to try to have a broader context for what we're going through. Like, yeah, there's a lot of unprecedented things happening, but it's still part of a rhythm and a cycle. And people were still raising families during the Holocaust and all these other horrible things that have happened throughout time. And life goes on, and we're all part of a much bigger organism and mechanism that we can't understand, or we can't see the picture. Whether you want to take a purely materialist view of that, and that we are just functioning cogs in a indifferent universe, or we are part of something bigger that we can't really understand or explain on a spiritual level. Whatever your viewpoint is, we're part of this very complex organism, and
Yeah.
can't get too hung up on things that are outside of your control. You just got to kind of keep showing up and serving your function, which for each individual person is like fairly limited. It's a lot to just get up and deal with your to-do list. Sometimes you can't solve all the problems of the world, but I think if um, you just try to do the best you can, whatever it is that you do. If everybody did that, and had good intent, that would solve a good deal of our problems right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes me think of one of my favorite verses from the New Testament, which is like the Pharisees are asking Jesus, like, when are we going to know when the end times are? And he's like, there's going to be many people who say like, here it is or there it is, but let me tell you that the kingdom of God is already within you. And that I think is one of the most powerful, and it's reverberated across like all different belief systems and all different faiths. I mean, another quote that I love to share with people that is like that is there was a Buddhist teacher from the 1900s who said, tend to the part of the garden that you can touch. And it's such
That's
this,
I've
it's
never
like
heard
such a
that.
humbling idea. But it's such a beautiful idea because, you know, the kingdom is already within us. Like that's so crazy to think about, but it feels true whenever you hear it because it's like
Yeah,
real, all I can control is me. And I can do little things around other people, but if at the end of the day, if all of us just realized that maybe this thing just goes on forever and maybe it never really does end, but if we can realize that our life is can reach a full potential if we just embody it, then whatever era we live in will be a pretty a pretty good era to exist in.
absolutely. I think people confuse that with like being ambitious, like you have to go achieve something great. It's like
Yeah,
fulfilling your potential doesn't necessarily mean that, like, it can be much more internal than that. It can just
yeah,
be learning to live truly in the present and not being riddled with anxiety and dread and wasting all your energy on these like toxic frames of mind that we find ourselves stuck in. And yeah, I think it's a shame. I'm not a specifically religious person, but I think a lot of people, if they're not religious, they just will scoff at things. It's like, oh, Jesus quote, okay. It's like, oh, this is somebody, or at least the idea of a person, if that's how you want to look at it, who has shaped a huge swath of culture and humanity at large. And it's definitely worth reading that literature and looking
yeah.
into this stuff, because these have shaped our ideas and how we understand the world, whether you agree with it or not. But like most of what Jesus said is like kind of hard to argue with. It's pretty common sense. It's not like this intense dogmatic Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good model for living life, actually. Like turn the other cheek, right? Somebody does something bad to you, just like let it roll off. Don't try to seek revenge. Don't get caught up in it. Don't let it ruin your day. Just keep going. Care about other people. It's like these are good things to go by. And the kingdom is already within you thing. That's really interesting. I can't remember if we got into this last time, but like I have been practicing transcendental meditation for I think it's going to be 7 or 8 years this October, twice a day, every day.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something I've heard. I forget who said this, but so some some spiritual teacher talking about this basic whole complete place that you get to in deep meditation, where um the world is like no longer really divided into subject object. You're just It's just awareness. And like when you really hit that space in your head, it's so incontrovertible, like it's so undeniable. It's peace, it's bliss, it's complete. And it as soon as, like, pretty much as soon as I started meditating and experienced that, I became less afraid of death, because
Hmm.
it's like, oh, this feels like something that we like return to. This, it
Hmm.
feels like this primordial soup of consciousness that you're kind of cast adrift in when you reach that headspace. And that probably sounds kind of out there, but like it's like really not a crazy tech. Like you shut your eyes and you repeat a silent sound in your head for 20 minutes, and like you can fall into this state.
Hmm.
And it really does feel like that. Like there's something complete and peaceful that contains everything.
Hmm.
And that's like our baseline. If you can strip away all of the chaotic thoughts and the stress and everything, and it's just you and your awareness, and you're aware of nothing else but your awareness, like that's a very complete feeling, and it feels healing, and it feels like something very familiar. And I think that's very much like what that quote might even be referring to. It's like we have, um, however you access that, not
Hmm.
specifically meditation, but like look, everything is perfect within you. Like the external world is
Yeah.
chaos, pain, and inconveniences. But if you strip that away, like our fundamental awareness is this really wholesome, infinitely rich place that, and that's when you experience that and realize that's actually what's underlying
Hmm.
the, the storm of emotions and events in your life. There's something really liberating and reassuring about that. And yeah, people get so swept up in rage, and just we're just too distracted to even think about something like that. And it's like the
Hmm.
fact that we're conscious at all is insane. I have this feeling when I woke up this morning. I woke up and it just kind of felt like a program was reloading again. It's like, oh yeah, here's my room, and there's the cats. Like you just kind of refamiliarizing yourself, and it just struck me as so strange. It's like, man, I wake up every day,
Yeah.
and I can't help it. Like I'm in this body, I'm in this life, I'm in this consciousness, and that's, we take it for granted, but it's really crazy to wake up every day and find yourself in the same life where you have to keep trying to climb this mountain of problems and goals and whatever is going on in your life. And we're all dealing with it. We're all putting out fires and checking off to-do lists. And just take a step back and realize, like, to be here, to be aware, to be able to create, to be able to exchange ideas, it's miraculous. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible power that we have. And most of us are just completely squandering it or actively using it for harm. So, there's not a lot I can do about that, but talking about it helps, and getting people to just understand that, like, yeah, look at you, you're incredible. Like, we can think about things, and we can form relationships with people, and we can make stuff, and we are very strange, very interesting creatures. Go do something with it, doesn't have to be something great. Just like go, just go and be a good person at the very least. And we can turn things around slowly.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think about of an ocean where it's like it's so almost infinitely deep, and uh but all that we perceive really most of the time is just what's on the surface, which I mean could be you're in the middle of like a like some kind of storm and your boat's about to capsize. But then if you were to just kind of like jump in the water and go down maybe even 20 feet, you almost completely forget that there's even a storm going on up there. And I mean the shock waves of it are still hitting down to the bottom in some level, but on the other hand, it's you just feel that calm of just being within something that is always moving and is always breathing, and but it's always just moving in that peaceful state of existence.
And everything comes from it, right? Like everything
Yeah.
comes, life comes from the ocean. That's actually literally the metaphor when you go to learn transcendental meditation. That's like one of the first things um, that they tell you as a metaphor. It's like, okay, so your thoughts are the surface of the ocean. You have waves
Hmm.
crashing. It's chaotic. It's turbulent, and your mantra is like, this submarine. You're slowly going down, 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 down until it's still. And yeah, I think however you can access that, if it's just lying down and listening to some calm music before you go to bed, anything but just constantly filling our eyes and our ears with crap just because we feel this constant need to stimulate ourselves. It's just like that experiment they did with rats where they like gave them a button that would like dispense cocaine. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I mean, that's it's crazy when you find yourself engaging with things in that way and you catch yourself. It does feel really gross. You do feel like a rat in a in the laboratory, and it's like, well, there are greater powers that be that see you exactly as that as well. So, be careful.
Um, well, I think that that's a good spot to start wrapping up. But before we leave, usually I ask kind of the same question to everybody, but I've already asked you that before, so I'm not gonna do it again. Um, just simply though, I find it kind of interesting because like as we're talking, we are referencing all these different things that interest us and that are changing our lives. And even in the last episode, we talked about books that are really impacting our lives and everything. At this state right now, at this time that you're in, what what's inspiring you? Like whether it be art, books, events, what's keeping you uh I don't know, what's keeping you inspired?
All kinds of stuff. So I can show you exactly what I always have a stack of books and movies and things that I'm pulling down. I recently started reading Hayao Miyazaki's Shina's Journey. I think
Oh, okay.
he did this in the early or mid 80s, and you can see the DNA of a lot of his earlier movies. You
Oh,
can see
wow.
ideas that he was kind of working on in this. And this is really inspiring to me because this is something that I'm kind of interested in doing myself. Like I've been interested in comics for some time, but because I'm more fundamentally like an illustrator, not a comic
Hmm.
book artist, I didn't really see my way into it. But there's a lot of these full page panels, and it's
Wow.
much more illustrative style. It's not that really heavy inked style that you would see in like a Jack Kirby Marvel
Hmm.
comic or something like that. So I'm starting to see my way into potentially doing something like that. I think it's a really beautiful art form, and it has a lot in common with filmmaking, but
Hmm.
you can do it without much resources. You just need some paper and some art supplies. It's not as complicated, not as many moving parts as animation. Um, I had set this down for a little bit, but I'm going to get back into reading Arthur
Oh
Machen's
yeah, Makken.
Great
Yeah.
God Pan and other horror stories. Um, and I've been so daunted by this for the longest time, but I don't know when I'm gonna have the time to read a book this huge right now. It's just hard to imagine. So I finally gave in and started listening to the audiobook version of Alan Moore's Jerusalem,
Okay.
which is a 61-hour audiobook.
Whew.
Magnum opus. So far, um, it what I gather from it, it all takes place in Northampton, England,
Hmm.
where he's lived his whole life basically. And each chapter is moving through different strata of time, different characters, and everything. He's kind of showing the vast, infinitely interconnected
Hmm.
uh, material that our life and time and space is. So he'll jump across centuries. There's the perspective of ghosts. The first chapter is told from a young girl's perspective, and then it's a guy in the 1800s, and then it's a prostitute in 2006, and then and then it goes into the perspective of this ghost who you don't realize is a ghost at first. And I'm just a couple hours into it, so who knows where I'm sure it's going to get really crazy by the end. But Alan Moore has had a really big impact on how I think about art and creativity in general. And like, even if you think he's crazy, I think the way he talks about art is really helpful. It's a helpful way to like organize your thoughts about what art is and what creativity is, and how to engage with it. And he practices what he preaches. Like he talks about all this stuff. can feel it in his writing and in his work. It's so potent, and the way he can really transport you into the head of another person's experience that you'll never be able to live. And he's so good at it. And it just feels so visceral. So I've been enjoying that. This is pretty much always my music rotation. Sagen Umringen by Bo
Okay.
Hansen, music inspired by The Lord of the Rings before any movie adaptation had come out. I think this first came out in 1970.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really great. It's a Swedish keyboard player, and it's like really evocative, beautiful music that captures the spirit of the books beautifully. And I've also been studying Tolkien's artwork as
Oh, yeah.
well. That's been a big influence on me lately, and just a lot of like Soviet and Eastern European animation, which I owe a lot to with the technique that I use. I'm making a conscious effort to study more of it, become more acquainted with this particular movement and region and history of animation. Because I owe so much to it, I feel like I need to broaden my understanding of some of the other people who were involved in that movement of work. So I'm constantly devouring stuff. So, a lot of John Williams lately, Philip Glass, all kinds of stuff. How about you?
So I just finished The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is just like it's a normal fiction book, but it's so crazy actually because it's really interesting what she does with the story. It's about these, have you heard of it before?
I haven't.
Okay, so it came out in the early 90s. It tells the story of these college students, and it immediately, like on the first page, lets you know like what's going to happen in the story. It lets you know that it's a murder mystery. Um, but she infuses so much philosophy, and the students are studying Greek classics and the Greek language at large, and so like their whole world is kind of defined by their um, by what they are learning in Greek, and it's kind of and they're very separate from the world while also still being a part of it, and they're just kind of driven to these like crazy immoral acts of violence sometimes because they are trying to channel the Dionysian spirit. Literally, at one point in the book, a large plot point is that they perform bacchanal, I think is the name of it, which is
Yeah.
the rites of Dionysus that people would perform in ancient Greece, where you go out to the woods and you just allow the spirit of Dionysus to enter you, and you go and do these crazy things. And that book was insanely good, actually. It's like 600 pages long, but for some reason, every publication
Secret
of it
History?
is like an inch thick. Yeah, it's Secret History, by Donna Tartt.
That sounds
Um,
really cool.
yeah, it's great. And it's really funny because I don't know why every publication is like this, but it's like all the books are like an inch thick, but they're like 600 pages. I don't know how they squeeze that many pages into it. But no, that one was awesome. And then so I just finished that a couple days ago, and then now I'm moving into some philosophy books that I had. And so I just started reading Camus because I got The Myth of Sisyphus 2 summers ago and haven't gotten to read it yet. And then I just bought The Rebel like a couple months ago. And so now I'm starting The Rebel first. And that one's really interesting because Camus, from like the little that I know about his philosophy, I feel like I relate a lot to. Um, because, and it's actually interesting with him. He's kind of like Nietzsche a lot with like his philosophy, where a lot of people misunderstand what it is that he's getting at, and they think that he's sort of presenting a nihilistic portrait of the world because of the way that he talks.
Hmm.
But really, what he's doing is saying, because the world is like this, therefore we have to draw meaning from it, and we have to become the best version of ourselves. And that's why I really love Nietzsche as a philosopher and Camus as a philosopher, because they're both kind of drawing at that same spring, which is like, hey, if the world is this absurd and if the world is this somewhat meaningless, like we have to be the ones to enact meaning and enact action.
I find that really comforting. So I was raised in a Christian church, and basically as soon as I left home and started asking some questions, I like went the full
Yeah.
pushing against it, got into Christopher Hitchens and all that stuff and kind of went overboard. But honestly, what something that was comforting to me in that initial extreme resistance to anything to do with with religion or spirituality was the idea that if everything is meaningless and random, and
Hmm.
which I don't necessarily think, but even if it is,
Hmm.
um, it's up to us to make our own meaning and to
Yeah.
decide what our lives are going to be. And I think as long as you're not harming anyone, and that's the stance you take, like you're going to have a. It was really liberating, and I actually found myself like without the carrot and stick of hell and heaven that was presented to me as a kid. I found that like. And without thinking that, oh, this is just a trial run for the afterlife, I put a lot more stock into everything I was doing and what I wanted to
Mm.
do with my life. Like it was like, oh, this is up to me. And it made me take things more seriously. So I've kind of since synthesized more ideas into that and become less rigid. And, I'm not a militant atheist like I used to be, and have a much more broad agnostic concept, like anything could be the case, and I'm willing to try and learn from anybody's perspective on it. So I have a lot more holistic approach to it now, but that's still, I guess that really freaks some people out. Like, oh God, well, if God didn't make me and doesn't love me, and I'm not going to heaven, like I think that's very freeing to realize that it's up to you to provide context and meaning and be moral for its own sake rather
Hmm.
than because you don't want to get punished forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, um, that's a great philosophy to come across when you're in your early adulthood. I think everybody needs to reckon with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the argument too that Camus makes to start off the Rebel, which is basically, I mean, he was writing this right at the aftermath of World War II. And so I mean, he had seen like everything that happened in the world whenever kind of the nihilist, absurdist agenda is left unchecked without any sort of grounding to it. And I think that that's why he's so insistent in the Rebel to start off is that, you know, we have to acknowledge that the world is, well, he says, we have to acknowledge that the world is absurd, but in that acknowledgement, realizing that man is the only creature that feels like he needs to reach somewhere higher than where he currently is, that we have to, how does he put it? In acknowledging the absurdism of everything, we have to acknowledge, or sorry, my brain's completely blanking out right now.
No, you're good.
Um, Man, I just read this earlier. But we have to be able to kind of decide, okay, if there is no actual source of meaning, we have to be able to decide meaning, or else we're all going to fall face first because, kind of the way of humanity is we're always going to be moving forward. And so if we can't agree on anything and we can't derive any sort of morality from what we see, it's just gonna end with violence and murder. And
Yeah,
I find that very poignant. Yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, even if things might all go to hell, and like you have to approach things optimistically, um, kind of in parallel to what you were just saying. Like,
Hmm.
even if meaning and order and hope are like not immediately relevant, you have to kind of take that as your framework. Otherwise, you're guaranteeing that things will probably go to hell.
Yeah.
Like we're just going to give in to everything and let it steamroll us. So whether you believe it deep down or not, these are useful structures for organizing our actions and our thoughts to function in this crazy whatever this is that we wake up next day and have to deal with and confront. Um, it's a big responsibility, and it's a lot to take in, and so yeah, I think we do have to give things meaning, and we have to give things some structure, because yeah, otherwise, like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think my kind of overarching world philosophy just from I don't know, from my life up until now is I mean it's a large mixture of my Christian upbringing, as well as my, my love of Tolkien and, his philosophy of the world. And now this recent kind of, well, recent as in like the last 6 or so years, delve into all these different philosophies is like, I actually kind of take a different approach to what Camus is talking about and what Nietzsche is talking about is, I believe that the world is like fundamentally, I believe the world fundamentally does have meaning in it, but I think the absurdism in my eyes comes from, you know, we are part of this giant story, and and so to think about that, it's like, we're like one book in the library. And we don't always see the whole story, because of that. And so the absurdism is like, how is my little life important in all of this? And it's so I think it's like we find meaning in that pursuit. And yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all too big for any one person to process. So you're right. You just try to make as good of a book as you can on all you can do.
Well, thank you, Robbie, for coming on. This was a great
Yeah,
conversation. I'll
me
let you
too.
get going because it's been a little bit, but I would
Well,
love
it's
to
all
have you
good.
on again. I mean, this is always phenomenal talking to you.
Just let me know, man. I'm grateful that you're out there instigating good conversations like this, and it's an important thing you're doing, and I'm grateful for it. So, thanks, man. Just let me know, and
Yeah, of
I'll
course.
talk to you again.
Right as we end, I hear thunder rolling in the background.
Really
That's
nice.
really funny. Yeah, we're getting like a giant rainstorm out here.